I came only to deliver a package, but the alien princess held my hand and whispered, "Dance into my heart." The unexpected delivery. The cargo bay doors hissed open, releasing Ren Calloway into the perfumed atmosphere of Vera Prime. After 3 weeks navigating the Helix Nebula's treacherous currents, his muscles ached for something other than the cramped cockpit of the vagrant star. The crystalline palace before him rose like frozen music, its towers catching the light of the binary suns and scattering rainbows across the landing platform. Ren adjusted the magnetic case containing his delivery, an ancient star compass recovered from a derelict station, and approached the palace guards. Their armor gleamed with a pearlescent sheen that marked them as Veran elite. After a brief security scan, they escorted him through corridors where walls seemed to breathe with gentle luminescence. The throne room took his breath away. Vines covered in tiny blossoms climbed toward a domed ceiling that displayed real-time constellations. And there, rising from a throne carved from a single massive geode, stood Princess Salvara Miran. She moved toward him with an otherworldly grace, her gown flowing like liquid silver. Her skin held a faint opalescent quality, and her hair fell in waves that seemed to catch and hold starlight. When her eyes met his, deep violet with flecks of gold, Ren felt something inside him shift, like a compass needle finding true north after years of wandering. "The star compass," he managed, his voice rougher than intended. "From the Collector's Guild." Salvara reached for the case and their fingers touched. The contact sent warmth racing up Ren's arm. She didn't immediately pull away. Instead, her fingers curled around his, holding his hand with unexpected intimacy. Her touch felt like coming home after a lifetime in the cold. "You've traveled far," she whispered, her accent musical. Then, in a voice barely audible, she spoke words in her native tongue that translated through his neural implant, "Dance into my heart." Before Ren could process the meaning, she led him through a side archway into a moonlit garden, still holding his hand beneath the crown. The garden defied everything Ren knew about physics. Platforms of polished stone floated at various heights, connected by bridges of solidified light. Flowers with petals like stained glass swayed without wind, and a fountain in the center sent crystalline water spiraling upward in defying gravity's pull. Salvara finally released his hand, but only to place both of hers on his shoulders. "Do you know what those words mean?" she asked softly. "My translator caught it," Ren replied, his heart hammering. "It's an invitation. A sacred one. Among my people, we only speak it to the one our soul recognizes." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I saw you in my dreams, Ren Calloway. A stranger with kind eyes and a wounded heart who would understand the cage I live in. You should have stepped back. Should have made excuses and returned to his ship." Instead he asked, "What cage?" "In 3 days I marry Commander Dravik Oranth. A political alliance to prevent war between our systems." Her voice broke slightly. "I will stand beside a man I do not love, bear heirs for the throne, and forget what it means to feel my own heartbeat." Ren understood cages. After Maya's betrayal 5 years ago, stealing his savings and leaving him stranded on a mining colony, he'd built walls around himself, choosing the solitude of space over the risk of connection. But something about Salvara's vulnerability cracked those walls. "Show me," he said impulsively. "Show me this heart dance." A smile transformed her face. She took his hands again and began to move, teaching him steps that felt ancient and new simultaneously. Her body pressed close to his, and he felt the warmth of her through the thin fabric of her gown. As they danced, she explained the telepathic link her people could forge, a connection that allowed shared emotions across any distance. "Focus on what you feel," she whispered against his ear, sending shivers down his spine. Ren closed his eyes and let himself feel the loneliness that had defined him, the hope he'd thought long dead, and now this overwhelming tenderness for a woman he'd just met. When he opened his eyes, tears streamed down Salvara's face. "I feel it too," she breathed. "Everything." He cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. She responded with desperate hunger, her fingers tangling in his hair. They stumbled toward a floating platform covered in soft moss, their kisses growing deeper, more urgent. His hands traced the curve of her waist as she pulled him closer, and for a moment, nothing existed but the two of them. A shout shattered the moment. Palace guards burst into the garden, their weapons drawn. The escape plan. Ren's quarters in the palace guest wing felt more like a gilded cell. Guards stood outside his door, and his communication devices had been confiscated. Through the window he watched Vera Prime's twin moons rise, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. "Can you hear me?" Salvara's voice echoed in his mind, startling him. the heart link. During their dance, she'd established the telepathic connection. I hear you, he thought back, marveling at the intimacy of her presence in his head. Dravik arrived early. He knows something happened between us. Her mental voice carried fear and determination in equal measure. He's moved the wedding to tomorrow night, during the ceremonial eclipse. But Ren, I cannot marry him. Not after feeling what we share. Then we run, Ren thought immediately. My ship is still on the landing platform. Too heavily guarded. But I know another way. Images flooded his mind, ancient tunnels beneath the palace, passages used by her ancestors during times of war. There's a servant, Mira. She raised me after my mother died. She'll help us. They planned through the night, their thoughts interweaving with an intimacy that went beyond words. Ren felt her anxiety, her hope, the way her pulse quickened when she thought of him. She felt his protective instincts, his growing love, the way he'd fight armies to keep her safe. The next evening, as celebrations began for the eclipse, Mira arrived at Ren's quarters with guard uniforms. Quickly, the elderly servant whispered. The princess waits at the eastern catacombs entrance. Disguised as guards, Ren made his way through corridors filled with nobles and dignitaries. He found Salvara in a shadowed alcove, dressed in simple travel clothes, a pack slung over her shoulder. When she saw him, relief flooded their link. They descended into tunnels that glowed with bioluminescent fungi, following Mira's hastily drawn map. The passages twisted through bedrock, sometimes so narrow they had to turn sideways. Behind them, shouts echoed as Dravik's soldiers discovered their escape. There. A soldier's voice bounced off stone walls. Ren grabbed Salvara's hand and ran. The tunnels branched endlessly, but she guided them using childhood memories, left at the underground spring, right where ancient carvings marked the wall. Energy blasts scorched stone near their heads. They emerged in a natural cavern near the spaceport, the vagrant star visible in the distance. But between them and freedom stood a squad of Dravik's elite soldiers, weapons raised. Salvara stepped forward, her royal bearing suddenly evident. Stand down. I invoke the right of sovereign choice. The soldiers hesitated. The ancient law allowed royalty to refuse any arrangement, but at a terrible cost, exile and renunciation of all titles. So be it, she declared. I choose my heart. Flight through the stars. The vagrant star's engines roared to life as Ren's fingers flew across the controls. Salvara strapped into the co-pilot seat, her face pale but resolute. Behind them, Dravik's command ship emerged from the palace hangar, sleek and deadly. Hold on, Ren warned, punching the throttle. The cargo ship lurched skyward, breaking through Vera Prime's atmosphere in a trail of superheated plasma. Warning alarms screamed as pursuit craft locked onto their position. Ren dove toward the nearby asteroid field, a graveyard of ancient cosmic debris that most pilots avoided. You're insane, Salvara gasped as he threaded between tumbling rocks the size of mountains. Insane for you, he shot back with a reckless grin. Through their link, she felt his complete focus, the way his instincts guided every movement. She closed her eyes and fed him information from the ship's sensors, their minds synchronizing until they moved as one. The ship became an extension of their joined consciousness. A massive asteroid loomed ahead, honeycombed with caves. Ren killed the engines and let momentum carry them into a cavern, the ship's hull scraping rock with a terrible screech. In the sudden silence, they heard Dravik's ships pass overhead, searching. We have maybe an hour before they scan this sector thoroughly, Ren said, already moving toward the cargo hold. Help me with the couplings. They worked side by side, Salvara using her knowledge of Veran energy systems to enhance the vagrant star's outdated drives. Her fingers brushed his as they connected crystalline capacitors salvaged from her personal belongings. Each touch sent electricity between them. Ren, she whispered, turning to face him. Sweat dampened her hair, and a smudge of grease marked her cheek. She'd never looked more beautiful. He kissed her deeply, pressing her against the bulkhead. Her hands slid under his shirt, exploring the contours of his back. He traced the curve of her neck with his lips, feeling her pulse quicken. They sank to the deck, a tangle of desperate need and profound connection. I love you, she breathed against his mouth. Is it madness to love someone you've known mere days? Then we're both mad, he replied, holding her close. Through their link, he showed her the truth of his feelings, the way she'd awakened something he thought dead, how her courage inspired him, the fierce protectiveness that would make him fight stars themselves to keep her safe. She showed him her own heart, years of loneliness behind a crown, the instant recognition when their hands first touched, her absolute certainty that he was her destiny. They made love there in the dim cargo hold, surrounded by crates and machinery with enemy ships hunting them. It was perfect. Afterward, wrapped in emergency blankets, they planned their future. Sanctuary Moon, Salvara murmured against his chest. It's neutral territory. They can't follow us there. Ren kissed her forehead. Then Sanctuary Moon it is. The engines fired. They shot from the asteroid field just as Dravik's scanners found them, racing toward the jump point with everything the enhanced ship could give. Energy blasts lit the void around them. Jump coordinates locked, Salvara announced, her hands steady on the controls. Together they pulled the activation lever. Reality twisted, and the vagrant star vanished into the safety of hyperspace, leaving Dravik's fury far behind. A new beginning. Sanctuary Moon lived up to its name. The small settlement nestled in a crater beneath a protective dome hosted refugees, lovers fleeing arranged marriages, political dissidents and dreamers from 100 worlds. No one asked questions. Everyone understood the price of freedom. Ren and Salvara rented a modest dwelling carved into the crater wall, its windows overlooking a garden where earth roses grew beside Varan starflowers. The vagrant star, now enhanced with her modifications, became their livelihood. They took contracts together, medical supplies to frontier colonies, data cores to isolated research stations, occasionally smuggling refugees like themselves to safety. 3 months after their escape, Salvara stood in their small kitchen, preparing a meal that combined human and Varan cuisine. Ren wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Message from Vera Prime, he said quietly. From Dravik himself. She tensed. Through their link he felt her fear spike. He's releasing all claims on you, Ren continued, unable to hide his smile. Apparently your brother convinced him that forcing your return would destabilize the very alliance the marriage was meant to create. You're free, Salvara. Truly free. She turned in his arms, tears streaming down her face. I was already free, she whispered. The moment you held my hand. They spent the afternoon dancing in their small home, practicing the heart dance that had bound them. Other couples in the settlement noticed and asked to learn. Soon, Ren and Salvara were teaching others the ancient Varan art of telepathic connection, helping forge bonds that distance couldn't break. A year later, they stood beneath the twin moons of Sanctuary, surrounded by friends from a dozen species. Mira had journeyed from Vera Prime to witness the ceremony. No priests officiated, just 2 souls speaking vows that had already been written in their hearts. I came only to deliver a package, Ren said, holding both her hands. But you whispered those words and I found something I didn't know I was searching for. Dance into my heart, Salvara replied, smiling through tears. That's what I said. And you did, Ren Calloway. You danced right into my heart and made it your home. Their lips met as the moons aligned overhead, and through their link, they felt what they'd feel for the rest of their lives, absolute, unshakable love. The vagrant star continued its routes through the galaxy, but now it carried 2 pilots, 2 hearts beating as one, proving that sometimes the most precious deliveries aren't found in cargo holds but in the courage to hold someone's hand and whisper, dance into my heart. Lessons from the stars. Love recognizes no boundaries, not distance, not duty, not the vastness of space itself. When 2 souls align, even galaxies cannot keep them apart. True freedom is not the absence of chains, but the courage to choose your own path, even when that path leads away from everything you've known. The deepest connections are forged not in moments of ease, but in the crucible of risk, when you choose each other despite the cost. Sometimes the universe delivers exactly what you need disguised as something ordinary, a package, a stranger, a moment when 2 hands touch and change everything forever.